Hey, what's up folks, how's it going? This is Watch. Hope you guys are all doing well. So we've been testing out the Parrot Anafi for a while now. We just recently did a comparison last week with the DJI Mavic Air. Definitely check out that video if you haven't done so already. But what was really surprising is how well this drone really performs against what DJI has to offer. And for a long time, DJI had a monopoly of having some of the best drones out there, certainly for consumer market. But this is a completely new direction for Parrot, and definitely in the right direction. I wasn't a huge fan of what they've been doing for the past couple of years with the Bebop 2 and the Bebop series of drones. This, however, pretty much fixes all the issues that we had from the previous generation of drones from Parrot, and it actually has some benefits that even DJI doesn't have to offer. The first thing I want to mention is the fact that if you are in the market for a new drone and are in some sort of a budget price point, if you take a look at the original MSRP for this thing, was around $700, $699, and now you can get it on Amazon and other places for around $550. And if you find stuff in the used market, even cheaper. So for around that price, this is an insane deal. And even though we're going to talk about its benefits, let's first go into some of the downsides that I've come across thus far throughout our testing. Now, first thing I want to mention that this thing does not have any obstacle avoidance system. There's no cameras at the back, at the front, anywhere. So you certainly can get into some serious trouble with this thing. You can crash it into a tree or anywhere. So definitely be careful when you're flying this thing. Certainly if you're a first-time drone buyer, that could be a concern, especially when you compare it to what DJI has to offer with their obstacle avoidance system, and their safety system is definitely superior than what we have over here. But this is definitely not the biggest problem with this thing. The most common problem that a lot of people are having is with the SD card. They're having readout errors, perhaps when switching from videos to photo modes. And this is mainly due to the fact that the SD card slot is actually underneath the battery, and there's a door that latches the card into the slot itself. And if it doesn't make the right contact points, or during a flight with extra vibration, the card can kind of slip out and not make contact to that slot, thus resulting in some sort of card readout error. I personally haven't had that problem at this point, but I may in the future, so I'll definitely keep you guys posted. Now, the other issue that I've had thus far is the charge time is actually fairly long, anywhere between 45 minutes to an hour sometimes, depending upon if you've completely drained the battery. The interface is really easy to use, and even if you're using a fast charger, USB-C or USB charging power supply, it's still going to take a little bit of time to charge this thing up, especially when you've drained it all the way down to like 10 or 5%. Now, my last complaint is to do with the live tracking capabilities. Although you have the capability, you still have to purchase a 99-cent app inside the interface, which is definitely kind of a nuisance. And the actual reliability and tracking performance itself is fine for most things, but if you move around too much, there are situations where the drone can lose track of whatever it's tracking. So the live tracking isn't as advanced and as reliable as the stuff that we see from DJI's drones. Now let's talk about the goods over here, and there's definitely a lot. Firstly, I think the design is quite fantastic. It's still very compact in its carrying case, maybe not as compact as the Air, but the upside is the deployment of the drone is actually a lot quicker. You don't have to fold out the propeller arms, and to put it away is just as fast, if not faster. So definitely a unique and simple fold out design, definitely very beneficial for getting up in the air as quickly as possible. The other nice thing is that the gimbal itself has that full 180 degrees of tilt flexibility. So if you want to shoot up in the air or anything above the drone, you have that capability, and you'll never come across the propeller arms in the shot, which is definitely a highlight, especially if you're flying in sports mode and you have a high degree of incline on or decline of the drone itself. So in pretty much every scenario, your shot will be uninterrupted, which is is awesome. And the other great thing is that the video quality, the 4K video specifically, is fantastic. Up there with what you're going to get with the Mavic series, certainly the Mavic Pro first generation and the Mavic Air, certainly better than the Spark drone from DJI, perhaps not better than the new Mavic 2 Pros and the Zooms, or some of the higher end Phantom series of drones, but definitely very, very fantastic. And that zoom feature is really awesome too. In 1080p, you can get up to 2.8 times digital zoom without any really huge quality degradation, since it's actually using the sensor itself to digitally crop into the frame. And in 4K mode, you can also have about 1.4 times zoom, which is fairly handy as well, especially if you want to get a little bit of a closer shot without actually moving the drone forward or backwards. So definitely an awesome feature here. And again, for that price point, pretty darn sensational. The other cool thing is that the battery life is fantastic. I've been testing out mostly in the winter time over here, so it's sub-freezing degree temperature, so I'm not going to get the best performance out of it. But even in bad scenarios like this, you can on average manage around 20 minutes, which is perfectly fine. And hopefully as we move into the spring, we'll get around 24, maybe even 25 minutes as Parrot claims. Now you can see how small the propellers are on the Anafi, and one of the benefits of this design is that it's super quiet, around 10 dB quieter than the Air. And when you're flying these days, you want to attract as less attention as possible, and having a quieter drone definitely helps out, especially if you don't want to disturb other people around you, or again, not attract too much attention and get kicked out, because these days drone flying is becoming more and more restricted. The less conspicuous we are in flying these things, the better it is, in my opinion. The last two things I want to talk about is that the app is really well integrated, super easy to use. I think it's a better user interface than what we have on the DJI side. I experienced minimum amount of crashing as well. So definitely a solid platform, especially for beginners or even advanced intermediate flyers. And there's no geofencing, to my knowledge at this point, for this particular drone, at least in Canada where I'm at. The application has no real restrictions in terms of no-fly zones. Obviously, you want to fly as smart and as safe as possible. You don't want to fly into aircraft airspace and things like that. But there are certain situations where if you live around an airport and things like that, and you have a drone that has geofencing mandatory, you're not even allowed to hover maybe a couple of feet off the ground in your backyard, versus you can do that on this thing, which is a nice little flexible feature that we have at this point of the game. Furthermore, in terms of hover stability and ease of use, in terms of flyability, it's just as good as any of the DJI products, in my opinion. Even though we don't have any kind of obstacle avoidance system, I would say it's as stable as anything you're going to find from the best drones on the planet. So again, for around the $550 mark, you cannot beat this thing. And at this point of the game, we now have finally a good alternative to the DJI drone, and that is the Parrot Anafi. If you have any specific questions, let me know. Definitely love to hear your thoughts about the drone. If you've ever tried one, again, love to hear a comment from you down below. And give us a thumbs up if you like this video. If you haven't checked out our full comparison of this thing versus the Air, there are some features that the Air definitely beats this thing on. So by no means am I claiming this is tremendously better than the Air. So definitely check out that comparison if you haven't done so already. And I'm Matt. We'll see you later. Take care.